You're live. Okay, welcome back, folks. This is not House Corrections, Institutions. That's where I was headed. So this is Joint Justice Oversight Committee. August 5th, we're continuing our work. We're going to start, we are running a little late, but we're going to hear from DOC, from both Commissioner of Corrections, as well as their Vice President of Psychiatric Services at WellPath, Dr. Allison Richards. And I would ask that bring up whomever you would like, because I see a whole crew of DOC here. So we have plenty of chairs. And this is going to be kind of a 30,000 foot view, a little bit of Act 117, some gender equity within correctional facilities. We just want to start having a conversation with you folks about the law and what is being requested of us as Joint Justice Committee to really do a look in terms of the medical services that's being provided. And also we need to talk about the policy around searches. If you've updated those policies, and then we need to take a look at that. So I'll turn it over to both of you. We'll start with the commissioner. If you could introduce yourself first, and then go to Dr. Richards. I don't know if that works.
I'm not sure if it's working either. It's sort of falling down.
It keeps falling down, but I think that it.
Can it be heard?
Oh,
If
yeah.
you're close enough.
All right. As long as we can be heard, that's all that's necessary. Thank you so much for having us today. I am John Murad. I am the Commissioner for the Vermont Department of Corrections.
Also, thank you for having me. I'm Dr. Allison Richards. I'm currently Vice President of Psychiatric Services for WellPath. WellPath is the healthcare contractor that the DOC contracts with. And up until March, I was the Director of the State Psychiatric Services for Vermont. So that's why I'm here.
I have a brief presentation with which I'd like to begin, and then we can move into, of course, questions. This was prepared by our new Executive Director of Policy and Strategy, Tracy Velasquez, who we're very glad to have aboard. So
for folks who knew Isaac, who knew Haley, Tracy has replaced them.
She's currently Isaac Haley, but we are still seeking a Haley. So
Seeking a Haley.
we are. That is correct. But she's her own and she's pretty terrific and we're very glad to have her aboard. And she told me to shout at her next. And it was time to move forward. One more. This is a quick overview of our incarcerated population and the trends in there. As you see, we are moving up. The trend has been an expansion in population over the last 2 years. This expansion really dates back all the way till 2022. But we have not yet gotten back quite to where we were in 2019 prior to the pandemic. So in 2019, we had approximately 1750 total incarcerated persons. Vermont is a unified system, as most of you know, but perhaps some of the watching public may not. What does that mean? That means that Vermont does not have sheriff's jails. And so we, along with 5 other states in the nation, have systems whereby both detained persons and sentenced persons are held together. Although actually in some of those unified systems, I've learned they don't house them together. They do a pretty good job of separating those two populations, but they still run the system as a singular entity. We run the system as a singular entity and house the people together. So when we look at these numbers, what you see here is the totality of our population. It is broken down by color for our female population housed entirely at the Chittenden Regional Correctional Facility. That population is much larger than it's ever been. We have seen it ebb a little bit over the past few weeks, which is a very good thing. But overall, in 2026, it has hit unknown highs or unprecedented highs, rather. You see our out-of-state population, approximately 150, housed at a core civic facility in Mississippi. You see the very tiny number of juveniles or early adults that we have at any given moment in our system. none of those individuals are going to be sentenced to be with us. They're going to be detained, awaiting trial, and then we would discover something else if they were to be sentenced. Some early adults might be sentenced, however, on non-state charges. And then the majority, of course, is the male in-state population, which is on these graphics, that purple band. Again, we were around 1,700 to 1,750 in 2019. There was an artificial decline in the wake of the pandemic when we purposefully moved people out of facilities because we were in the midst of a contagious disease outbreak. And a number of those folks are frankly coming back to us as detainees now, as we deal with some of the low-level disorder issues that the state has seen. And when I say we deal with, I mean that we are taking what the courts send us. We, of course, have no control over those who are sent to us or the numbers that are sent to us. Next, thank you. The average incarcerated population trends. Here we get to see that breakdown I talked about with detained and sentenced. A handful of people may be sentenced detained, meaning that they have been sentenced on one charge, but they have other charges that are pending. And then a very small number of immigration holds. Those immigration holds have ticked up over the past 2 years, which is, I think, unsurprising based on things that we're seeing at the national level with regard to immigration enforcement. But what is, I think, notable is the degree to which, especially in 2025, detainees began to present a much larger proportion of the overall population inside. Next, please. This is the same trends for males. Next, please. And then the same trends for females. And here, too, you really get to see that detained population spike in 2025. And it is slightly decreasing, which is sort of getting us back to a better position, although it's not represented on this graphic. We are always thinking about what we can do with CRCF. We desperately need a new women's facility. The women's facility in South Burlington is one of our oldest facilities. I think it is the oldest aside from a single wall at Marble Valley Regional Correctional Facility, which is from the very, very old jail prison that was there. But it is the oldest facility. It's the most in need of repair. We are authorized to build a new one, but we have not had a lot of forward momentum on that. And anything that this body could do to help would be appreciated. Immigration detainees. This is a troubling topic for our community and our state. It is something that many people feel keenly about and have watched keenly. These are our total populations. You'll see that our population for women has dropped off precipitously. That's partly because we are so overcrowded there, and we have moved to get our federal partners to actually have asked them to stop sending us women owing to the capacity issues at the facility. But we have not stopped our partnership with the federal immigration authorities, and that is because the governor has made clear that our belief is that by affording Vermont values and Vermont due process to these individuals, we are ensuring that they get what they are constitutionally entitled to with regard to court processes. Some of these individuals end up being held in state on habeas writs in the state. We've worked very closely with the Vermont Asylum Assistance Project, with the Vermont ACLU, and with the Vermont Human Rights Commission. Our general counsel, Lori Fisher, has done absolutely amazing work steadying those relationships and really getting us to a place where there's trust between our two parties, that being the Department of Corrections and those other entities that are there to represent these immigration holds. We provide names and information about the holds to these partners on a regular basis. Daily. And then we also have worked really diligently to improve our language access so that we're living up to our own standards that pre-existed this issue, but were not nearly as pronounced prior to this issue. But those language access tools and improvements are going to benefit everybody, whether it is an immigration detainee brought to us by federal immigration authorities, or whether it is a person accused of driving while intoxicated who only speaks French, who got picked up in Bristol. And so those are very important changes we've made. Next, please. My staff and I went back and forth and argued about whether or not this was going to be a good slide or a bad slide, or intelligible or not intelligible. This is a representation of our capacity, and we have been trying to figure out how best to visualize and display the capacity. This
Tetris.
is the most recent whack. Yes, it does look a little bit like Tetris. It is, these are images of our general population, which is the green, of our special housing, which is the brown, and then the blue represents the work camp, which only is at Northeast. I think what's striking about these is two things. There are times where we argue that we really should only be sharing general population beds and comparing that to our total population, simply because ostensibly, almost everybody in our custody should be in a general population bed. When we have infirmary beds, when we have, for example, segregated housing beds, which are for people who are going through certain behavioral issues and need to have that separation, we don't want them to stay in those beds. We don't want to just leave somebody in the infirmary. We don't want to leave somebody in a segregated housing cell. And so in some ways, the special housing beds almost don't count. And so the fact that there are empties, as it were, in those, which are represented by the white squares, it can be a bit misleading. Really, what we are looking at here is the degree to which the green is almost entirely filled, and in some cases overfilled, as those red squares demonstrate. And the degree to which, if we moved any significant portions of the specialized housings, we would be totally over capacity in the general population by really wide margins. And that was what we were hoping this might demonstrate, but I remain open to feedback as far as whether or not it worked or not.
Well, I'm finding it very helpful, if I understand the use of beds. So I think this is helpful for folks that really know bed usage and how it's divided up in the facilities, but it does raise a question in terms of the women's facility that you have in specialized housing, 19 vacant beds. Now, would that be booking beds that would be vacant?
Booking would be there, infirmary beds would be there. And so there is a decision to leave beds that are going to be needed for specialized use rather than putting people in them. The reds generally indicate women who are in non-permanent beds, which are floor beds, yes. And that is certainly not optimal for us. What I can say is a good thing is that we are not currently using the gymnasium for housing and beds, which we have had to do in the past. Small victories. But again, we desperately need a new facility for our women.
But also looking at the male facilities, that would be St. Johnsbury, the Northeast Correctional Facility, where you have 21 vacant beds. I mean, they're not all infirmary, they're not.
Those are work camp empty beds, the 21 specifically.
Okay,
And
even with.
yes, the special housing is a large number too.
Special housing, okay, so that's in the separate building.
Affirmative, and only some prisoners are going to be eligible
Right.
for housing in the work camp.
Right.
So that, yes, that does have some space. We routinely attempt to determine whether or not anybody can be appropriately moved into it from other places. But in the long run, it is a less restrictive unit that does require that people meet certain conditions around their behavior, around their sentencing, et cetera. And most of them also participate, of course, in certain levels of crew work. But that also is an example of a place where the emptiness in some ways contradicts, but inaccurately contradicts the overall overcapacity of the other parts of the system.
So if it's specialized housing, what are those beds in that particular building? Because it's really a minimum security. It's more of a barrack style. What specialized housing is occurring in that facility? Because
So the specialized housing would not be in the work crew part of the building. It would be in the other part of the facility. Actually, Deputy Director Rutherford, do you want to come up?
yeah, come on up, Josh. Because you have 100 beds total in
Correct.
that old work camp. And the blue block is only 50 beds. So the other 50, is that in that
So
part of that block that has the gold and the white?
Yeah, so for the record, Deputy Director Rutherford. So the blue and white is that work camp unit. That's a 50-bed unit that the commissioner is speaking to. That white and tan includes segregation beds in the secure building, in the non-work camp section, but we have a whole nother unit in the minimum security building. So that has two units. One unit is only used for work camp. The other is used for who we can find that can go in there. They may not go out and participate in work camp in the community, but they're okay to live in that sort of minimum security inside a single fence. We used to, and I think you'll remember, we used to use that entire building for work crew. That program no longer needs that much space. And so we really have struggled with what's an appropriate population to put in an open dormitory inside a single fence in a building that really is a true minimum security. And so largely that should be low risk, nonviolent folks who are less likely to be incarcerated in Vermont.
So would you move folks like from the Newport facility or the Springfield facility that would be able to be in the lower security building? Would you move them up there to the St. Johnsbury?
Yeah, if we have folks who are appropriate. Director Pasha goes through every 4 to 6 weeks, goes through the whole population to find folks who are appropriate for that location. If he can keep that entire building, that entire 112 beds, if he can keep 70 people in there at a time, then I'm pretty happy with sort of him finding all the folks in our system that can fit in there. That's really about the most we can find these days.
I think one piece of takeaway there is that the folks who would have been in that facility, that part of the facility in the past, are not really with the Department of Corrections incarcerated anymore. Correct. They are moved out to probation before they even come into our carceral custody. And so, and that's a component of justice reinvestment. That's a component of just changes in statute. And it means that we really, the sorts of incarcerated individuals who would be appropriate for that part of the facility are not with us in great numbers.
And we've looked a number of times at whether it would be possible to retrofit that building to a medium security, and it's not built that way at all. You'd really have to probably level it, rebuild entirely. It's completely designed as minimum security.
Next, please. Speaking of probation and folks who are not incarcerated, that's what these slides show. This is our overall community supervision population count for the past 12 months. It's been pretty steady. It is currently around a total of 4,800. This is not showing, I don't think, a certain number of abscondees that we currently track.
Last fiscal year.
It's the last. Thank you. This is broken down to show that the vast majority of folks in this category are probationers. That is a condition that is levied by the court, generally immediately. So upon sentencing, the person is given probation as the sentence and does not go to a correctional facility at that point. There are some instances in which a person is given what is called a split to serve sentence and may actually enter probation after a short period of incarceration. But for the most part, probation is a condition that is given by the court immediately. Those people have not been sentenced on the current charges, although they may have been prisoners at some other point. And they are addressed by the staff of our terrific 12 probation and parole offices that are distributed pretty evenly around the state. Those 12 offices provide the supervision for these probationers and for the parolees. Parole is determined by the Vermont Parole Board, which is an independent body, and makes its determinations based on input from the Department of Corrections, but independently in the final say. And then there are a small number of furlough folks. That's the blue line. Furlough is determined by the Department of Corrections. It's sort of the caveat to the idea that I've expressed before, which is that the people in our custody we have no control over the people who are in our custody. They're sent to us by the court and they're with us. Furlough is the slight exception to that. It used to be that furlough essentially would have been where the probation line is, and the probation line would have been down where the furlough line is. That has changed over the past 2 decades, decade and a half. Furlough really now is largely used for things like compassionate furlough or medical furlough, et cetera. The difference with furlough and probation or parole is that a furloughed person is still technically incarcerated. He or she is in the public. Our level of supervision over that individual is necessarily higher, and we can remand that person at our own determination. Parole and probation violations require moving through the court in order to get individuals sent back into the prisons if that's what's appropriate in that instance. Staffing and vacancy data. Our staffing, when asked what our big priorities are, our 2 largest priorities are staffing and getting our staff back to numbers that are good for both our people, for the people who are in our custody, and for the public, and the women's facility or the Chittenden Regional Correctional Facility, whether it's a replacement, a renewal, or what have you. Those are the 2 sort of most important pieces that are in front of us, although there are tons of others. Our introduction of new enhanced substance use disorder treatment inside the facilities, which has begun, and I'm very, very proud of, and the partnership we have with WellPath for that. Additionally, our work on the new S-193 or the act that is going to create a forensic facility and collaboration with NAHS over that. Those are also very important, but staffing, huge. I speak or communicate pretty regularly with Steve Howard. And am thinking a lot about this. Our numbers are not like this one starts at 17 overall in the facilities, the purple line, and ends at 17. That's not the right place. I hope that we have not reached some sort of stasis where this is where we is at, as it were. I don't want that. We have worked very hard. Our executive director for our training programs, our recruitment programs, Jim Rice, has terrific amounts of work that have been done on streamlining and facilitating our recruitment efforts. And in fact, if we were to look at recruitment, our recruitment has been pretty good. It is the retention that is a challenge for us. Young people tend not to stay in professions as long as they once did, and we are overworking them when they come to us. And that is a difficult thing to say, I'm going to stick around for 16-hour back-to-back shifts just because it's allowed me to afford a brand new Tacoma. That is a tough proposition for young folks. Our facility that is facing this in the most pronounced way is Northern State Correctional Facility in Newport. A component of that is that it is in a sort of a basin insofar as how accessible it is to other places, and we are largely tapped out of new employees in that part of the state. That is a daunting challenge for us right now. And they result in things that we don't like. There have indisputably been lockdowns owing to lack of staff. That is not what we want. We know that programmatic hours are sometimes altered owing to lack of staff. That too is not what we want. So this is a challenge for us.
How many folks are incarcerated up at Newport?
400 approximately.
So if 17% is the average or the trend, what is it? So for instance, what is it in Newport? What's the vacancy rate?
I believe it to be closer to the mid-20s right now, but I could be wrong on that. I'll get you that information more accurately. I may have it actually. It's a subject of another topic, but I don't want to derail the conversation by hunting through paper for you, ma'am.
I have a question. I apologize for being late, Commissioner. Have you gone over the search and the pat down procedures?
No, sir, we have not yet gone.
I'll wait for that.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Let's see. Did I have information about? I'm afraid I don't have specifics on.
That's okay. It's higher than the 17, obviously.
It is.
So, yeah.
It is. What I'm seeing here is that there's 55 deployable staff out of the 99 total positions at Northern.
Oh.
So it's a little bit more than half, but not much more.
Wow, that's big.
That's deployable positions in the security ranks, not overall at the facility.
Yeah, but out of 99 deployable.
Affirmative.
Yeah.
So that can be addressed in part by bringing in casework staff, et cetera, other positions to fill in. We bring in members of probation and parole if they volunteer. We bring in members of our central operations division. Although their primary role is covering hospitals, they currently cover 83% of our hospital coverage is done. So that a challenge that you probably are familiar with, ma'am, is that it used to be that the field was responsible for a lot of hospital coverage. Right now, they're doing 3% of all hospital coverage, whereas the Central Operations Division takes on 83%. That division can also assist with acute situations like Northern. But yes, the staffing situation is challenging there.
At what point does it become unsafe, frankly, I mean, it feels like at, 50% staffing or more for that. I mean, that seems to be a point where it would be unsafe, frankly, to operate a facility.
Yeah, I think that because of the ways in which we're able to get additional people in there, we are not at that level of being unsafe. I think, yes, if there were no other mechanisms to fill positions, then the numbers that I just described at the facility alone would be inadequate. We'd have to explore probably shutting units and moving people out of those units into other locations. But because we are able to fill it with other persons from other roles across the department, I don't believe that we've reached that point, but I think about what that point is regularly.
And I mean, that means that those other people are not doing those jobs.
Well, it's generally done on their overtime shifts,
On their
so,
overtime.
although not for COD.
Thank you.
Compliant connectivity, Wi-Fi, and corrections, an update on this. We have made some milestones. We are working incredibly hard. I am tremendously indebted to our Deputy Commissioner, Kristen Calver, who's here and can weigh in if there's anything that needs to be addressed or clarified, who has really kept this project moving forward, who has been clear that, when we hear things like, yeah, we think we can do this by January, that's not acceptable, that it needs to be sooner than that. And so we have made progress on this, but can you turn on a device and get adequate coverage in any given facility at the moment? No, not in all of them.
So how, for the milestone, contract awarded, can you explain what that is? Is that the RFP that went out? Is that the result of the RFP bidding process? And as Agency of Digital Services also signed off on this.
Hi, everyone. Kristen Keller, Deputy Commissioner, DOC. We are working very closely with ADS. I met with them day before yesterday to make sure everyone was okay with the slide, the information that we'd be presenting today. What that contract award speaks to is the RFP that's explained in the text on the bottom. And that's to secure the folks that will do the studies with us and the planning. It's a very tight timeline. We're all concerned about that. And working to kind of clear the plates of folks who will need to be involved to make sure we can meet these. But so far, so good. Everyone is on board, and ADS has been a great partner so far.
So you went out to bid for an RFP.
It's not posted yet. It will be within the next couple of weeks.
For the RFP, correct?
This is contracted.
Yeah, that's.
Yeah, the contract award will be in late summer, and the RFP will be issued in a couple of weeks.
But we are in late summer.
Yeah, I was gonna say August would be defined.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, we did go back and forth what defines late summer, early fall. Trying to be positive about it. We'll go with late summer.
So the RFP is going out,
Yes,
and from that RFP, then you're going to develop a contract.
correct.
Okay, yeah.
RFP has not been issued.
Not yet, very soon.
Okay, this is a little misleading. I'll be
Okay,
honest.
that's-
All right,
But
that's,
it should be indicating that the RFP is not even issued
Okay.
yet.
sure.
All right.
That's what it said.
Senator Harrison.
Senator Mears.
Wendy, we don't see you, so thank you, Megan.
Yeah, thank you. So this project timeline is for, is to get a contractor to do the design, I expect, right?
Yeah, they'll work through the design, all the assessments, and help us create the cost proposal. So the idea is to be able to submit a cost proposal in the capital bill for the upcoming session. So that's what
Okay,
they'll,
and then so when would the system be installed?
as soon as we have funding to do so. So that'll depend on how things go this session, and then when funding is secured, and we can start that installation work.
So what would be the earliest time that it would be available or
I
used?
think, I'll think positively again, assuming we get all the money that we need this session and are appropriated for July 1st, then we can start the installation work then. That's best case scenario.
So you would start the, I'm just trying, I'd like to know the end point, the most optimistic end point.
I can't give that to you until we have the assessments completed, and a lot of that depends on installation work that BGS will have to collaborate with us on and the actual design of the Wi-Fi structure itself.
Okay, so it's probably at least another year, maybe another 2 years after this, I would.
Potentially.
Yeah, okay. All right, and then I have some other questions on other things that I can hold.
So to pick up on what Wendy's saying, so the RFP that you're gonna be putting out shortly. Then when you see how many people bid on it, then who decide to work with. You and Agency of Digital Services with this company will design what needs to occur to install the Wi-Fi. You will have that done, goal is by the end of this year, so that you can submit a proposal and a request for dollars. Correct. In January of next year.
Yep.
Then it's up to the legislature to figure out how much money and where the money comes from before you actually can start construction.
Correct.
And once you start construction, may be another year before it's finally up and running, depending.
It could be, yeah, I hope it won't be, but.
Questions? Anything else? Okay. Thank you, Chris.
There's no thoughts. Okay.
You ready for an update?
Yes.
Hello.
Now we're gonna shift gears to the gender equity issue and searching in healthcare
Yes.
policy.
So I haven't met many of you, but thank you. I'm Dr. Allison Richards. A little bit of background is I came up to Vermont and trained in Vermont, did my psychiatry residency at the old Fletcher Allen Healthcare. I'm an adult psychiatrist, child and adolescent psychiatrist, and then for the majority of my career worked at the Vermont Psychiatric Care Hospital. I was the medical director there for almost 10 years. Took a little break. I was a professor at the University of Vermont, and then took a position with WellPath. I had a passion for incarcerated patients. I saw many of them over my career working at the state hospital, and so decided to go work in corrections to help get people care in the correctional system. So I did that for about 2.5 years. As I mentioned, transitioned a vice president role with this company, but I'm still very much involved with Vermont and work with Dr. Toby Horn, who's the new psychiatric director. So the gender affirming care, I could provide just a little overview of what WellPath does generally, and then zoom in on gender affirming care. WellPath provides healthcare services to incarcerated individuals in Vermont. It's comprehensive, so it's from medical care, dental care, psychiatric care, any type of care a patient may need, we provide that to our patients. From the moment a patient is booked, we have about 4 hours as our policy that we will do an initial medical evaluation with that patient. So the attention on an individual patient's healthcare needs is pretty quick within the facility. The correctional officers do their screening, and I just wanted to emphasize that we are very much in communication with our correctional partners about patients and the level of care they might need, especially when it comes to gender affirming care. We're very much in communication so that we are able to track our patients. And I'll get into that a little bit more. So within 4 hours, a patient will have a medical workup with a nurse. It's an intake. It screens our patients for any and every, if you can imagine yourself, any medical illnesses you have, medications that you're on, mental health needs, psychiatric needs, those are screened and then appropriate referrals are placed at that point. Every
Can
patient.
I
Oh, yeah.
interrupt
Yes.
this here?
Yes.
So just to have a better understanding of the screening process.
Mhm.
Is it voluntary information that the person gives you?
Mhm.
Do you also have access to their medical records from their primary care provider or their pharmacists or folks on the outside? Do you also have that handy at that time?
Yes, so anyone's, what a person decides to share is voluntary. So certainly someone can come into the facility and be, Vermont, I believe, we have access to Vital, which is our electronic health care system that shares records with most hospitals and mostly hospitals throughout the state. Vermont is an opt-in for the DOC, so if you don't opt out, you're opted in, and that allows access to your records. I guess I would say lots of patients decide to opt out and then we don't have access. So it's certainly up to a person's autonomy what they want to share when they come into the correctional system. They may say, I have no medical issues, I have nothing, and I don't want any care. And that's complicated depending on what's going on for a person, but we always respect someone's autonomy. We do have access to Vital, which is a great resource. We utilize Vital typically if a person is willing to share information, like what's your pharmacy you use, that's where we get that information about medications that we can verify with a pharmacist to make sure we have the right medications, the most updated medications. Vital becomes helpful when we don't know a lot of information. Someone may not remember what pharmacy they use. If their care has been disrupted, we can go into that system and find some information. Usually it comes from the patient themselves. They'll share information and then we get that and kind of collaborate. We'll corroborate information, but it is voluntary.
There's limits to that voluntariness in the sense that if a person has a massive open gash or a broken arm and is insisting that that person does not have that broken arm, I do not have a broken arm, we are still going to override that person's decision about not having a broken arm in the good faith of taking that person to the facility to be evaluated, to a medical facility. So there are exceptions, but with regard to simple things like what medication are you on, that is up to the individual to share.
And how often does it occur when someone just refuses to allow you to have access to their records, medical records?
I don't know that I could give a number, but
Percentage, I mean, it's like 10%.
maybe 10%. I would say it's on the lower end, 10-15%. And again, in my work, individuals who have been involuntarily hospitalized with serious mental illness oftentimes don't want to share information, don't want care, and that becomes a little bit more challenging. But I guess I would say it's a lower number, and the number of individuals that opt out of Vital is much lower. I would probably guess like 5%. So I feel like we do get a lot of good information from the patient, from the other sources that we have. And we do, if an individual will sign releases, which most people will, then we'll get primary care records, community partner records, hospital records. We really work hard to get a comprehensive picture of our patients.
I have a quick question. So in the beginning, you were talking about how someone incarcerated might share with a correctional officer and about their gender identity or their any conflict that they might have with regard to that. Now you're talking about clinical information. So when you talk about sharing Vital, the Vital is clinical information, is all subject to HIPAA. So I think as Commissioner Murad was saying, and as you were saying, Dr. Richards, and I'm just clarifying that the medical information is still HIPAA protected until and unless the incarcerated person decides to share it with someone outside of the medical community.
Correct. That's correct.
Okay, I was trying to follow all of that. So thank you.
But look, so they would not, I just want to follow up on that one, Jenny, because you're saying if it's within the medical community, they would not need to give authorization to release that information?
No. Were you following a thought?
Well, I just want clarity, because that's how I'm interpreting it. Am I interpreting it wrong? What Jenny, you just said, that for their health information, it can be shared within the healthcare community.
Within the healthcare, so within the healthcare services, within corrections, were you talking about sharing with DOC and the healthcare staff, Senator Lyons, or?
Well, WellPath is contracted out.
So I'm clarifying that clinical data is HIPAA protected. And the patient has control over that data. If they opt out from Vital, then they don't provide clinical data into Vital. Regardless, their clinical data, if they are in, their clinical data is available to any clinicians within the WellPath community, but it would not be available to corrections staff.
That's correct.
Unless they're unless it's a nurse or a physician or a PA or other.
Correct, that's correct.
Yeah, I think that was the question that Representative Emmons was asking, and you did clarify that. So it's not anyone who can go in and look at a patient's medical file.
Correct.
I'm sure in WellPath.
Unless you're in WellPath. We do work closely with health services at DOC, and that would be in situations like medical emergencies, high acuity, where we need to coordinate care. But the Department of Corrections staff aren't privy to anyone's medical records, and HIPAA is very important, and we do respect and follow HIPAA.
So I know we want to focus in on the transgender issue. So how many folks that you're seeing coming in the correctional facility are in the process of transgendering?
I would say it's about, we usually have around 10, 12, 15 would be a very high number in the state of.
Per year?
At any given time, I don't know that I've tracked numbers other than what it's usually around a number of 12 individuals.
The most recent information I have is 0.78% of the population.
Whatever that.
Yes, yeah.
So are you finding those folks have been transitioning prior to them being incarcerated or after?
I guess I would say it's everywhere on the spectrum of gender transition. We have individuals who've had surgeries. We have individuals who are still uncertain about if they're wanting to transition. So I guess I would say it's just about everything on the spectrum.
So if someone is currently transitioning, do they usually allow you to have access to their health records?
So I guess it's always individual. Most of the time our patients do, yes. And again, kind of back to booking, when that would be the point in time where we would, if someone decided to share that they were a gender, transgender, diverse individual, booking we would find out typically within that 4-hour window of medical intake. That's when we would proceed to start getting records if an individual decided they wanted to share them with us. We have had people that don't want to share, and then we just respect that and make ourselves available within our system of care.
Detainees. who don't want to share. Incarcerated individuals, sentenced people, it's different.
So your detainee population range from being there for 1 day, 2 days, 4 years. Do you run into situations with the detainee population that's a little more longer term, not the ones that cycle in and out pretty quickly, that have struggled for years trying to figure out which gender? Then they start deciding they wanted trans. What is the process for DOC and WellPAC for that scenario? Is it the same for folks who are detainees as sentenced?
From my perspective, yes, WellPath has a policy on gender affirming care, which from the moment someone is identified as being a transgender, gender diverse individual, we have I will say we have a very thorough process where we track all of that patient population. It's the only other population in the psychiatric world. We track SFI patients and we track our transgender patients.
What do you mean track? Just that.
We keep a list. They're a special population within correctional setting, considered a special population, a protected population. We track things because, as you're mentioning, someone may want to transition, they may be on hormones, they may want surgery. We track that information so that we're maintaining current information and making sure that patients are getting the care that they need. So an individual may decide to be a detainee. They may decide that they want to start hormones. We do have a process through our policy where most likely they're usually seeing the mental health providers. They're already seeing medical providers. We would do an assessment if they didn't have a diagnosis. If they already did have a diagnosis of gender dysphoria, we would refer them to medical to start hormone therapy. Lots of individuals, not lots, but many individuals decide to stop hormones. It's a fluid process. So we just kind of go with what the patient wants. We respect their autonomy and we're always available to provide care. So I mean, I have seen that situation. We will do whatever we need to do to make sure that the patient gets the care that they need, depending on where they are in the process.
Has there been any denial at all for folks who are requesting gender transfer?
There have been situations where individuals have made requests, but they were not felt to meet the diagnostic criteria. And in that case, for gender affirming surgery, for example, you need to have a diagnosis. There are certain criteria. We follow the criteria similarly that Vermont Medicaid follows. If someone is diagnosed with gender dysphoria, meets the criteria, is psychiatrically stable, there are lots of criteria that you have to meet. If someone doesn't meet those criteria or the diagnosis, then there have been situations where someone may not have moved forward with surgery. Trying not to give away, be sort of protective about information.
Which is a challenge, again, when you're talking about 0.78%, those are such small numbers that you can identify individuals when you talk about cases. It's not, it's not the same as saying a Ford Explorer, and there are thousands of those on the street. It's talking about a very specific individual, and that can be ultimately identified, which we don't want to do.
We need to get into this a little deeper too, because for the committee, in terms of how information is shared within WellPAC, and then what you share with correctional staff, the superintendent, supervisors, in terms of their medical care, but kind of on a really tight schedule.
Okay.
Right now, we have DCF. And Senator Lawrence has a. Okay, and then I want to get into the search policy.
Okay.
Jenny?
So you've been very clear that you're respecting patient autonomy and decision-making. It sounds like collaborative decision-making with a counselor or a psychiatrist and the patient. My question is, it's my understanding that folks who are in early stages or mid stages need ongoing counseling and support. Do they have one point of contact, or are you suggesting that there are different folks who are working with each patient?
Typically, there are lots of variables, but typically, if someone's housed at, let's just say Southern State, we have a set number of therapists that work at Southern State and psychiatric providers. That patient would continue to work with. We try to pair people with whoever they, if they have a good rapport, similar to in the community, if you have a therapist you like, we try to match people up so that they have that continuation of care. Sometimes patients get moved and that's disrupted. However, the director of behavioral health and each site has a director of mental health, and then there are therapists at each site. We work really, I would just say we're very seamless in the work that we do because it is psychiatric mental health, it all overlaps. So they would work with the same person typically. And we have done trainings. I don't want to get us off track too much, but we have trained all our staff in gender affirming care. This year, a mandatory training, and we provide ongoing training. It's an ongoing, field of medicine. And so we do that as well. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
So let's quickly move on to the search house. There's been some concern, DCF just came on Zoom. Okay, I know we're running a little late, but I know there was questions, many questions as well. That's the search house. Assuming that's back to you.
Yes, ma'am.
It's all yours.
Well, I don't know what questions there are about it, ma'am. Yes,
So you have a policy, this has been updated.
yes.
What was updated in it?
Quite a bit. It was, I want to say that it is not yet in effect. It was signed on the 24th and published online, which is where we put our policies. It goes in effect on the 11th. I am awaiting additional thoughts from my secretary and team, but the version that is online and available is an edit that takes an earlier draft that was not in full compliance with our gender placement policies, and splits that. First of all, puts it into compliance with the gender policy. The gender placement policy, identification and placement policy, dates back to February 26th, I believe, of 2026. I signed that. That has been up online and in effect for the past 6 months. This new searches policy is in comportment with it, or comports with it, excuse me, and is also what we did was we narrowed it by taking what really was an unwieldy 30+ page policy and dividing it into 3 policies, so that now 2 of them are not yet done. They are awaiting review by the Secretary's office, but they are policies around field searches and policies around dry cell status. Dry cell status is when a person is suspected of having contraband inside the person, and they're put in a cell that does not have flushable plumbing, so that the contraband can ultimately be recovered. Those 2 pieces, which were sort of wordy parts of the original search policy, have been removed and separated. The one that is currently on is a policy for facility searches. It comports with the gender identification and placement policy of February. And we're awaiting implementation in the next short period. Implementation as in going to effect. It's in process of implementation, and then it's been posted and socialized and people are training on it.
Oh, I know. Searches.
Yeah, probably my best interest of then you ask these questions, I guess. I'm certainly going to show my lack of knowledge in this particular area. So I'm looking through this, Commissioner. I see closed search, different gender searches. I guess to start with, I know we're on a time frame. do you treat detox versus lodgings versus people being incarcerated, removed from different facilities differently when they come into your facility as far as a search is concerned?
This does spell that out. This spells out differences in.
Read it, but.
That's fair. This spells out some of those differences. And yes, we do. There are different levels of suspicion necessary to, for example, perform an unclothed search on an incapacitated person. An incapacitated person is not held to have committed any crime. They're incapacitated in public, which oftentimes accompanies crime. But if there's a charge there, then they're not held with us as an incapacitated person. They're held with us as a person who has been, prearranged on disorderly conduct or what have you. If it's solely about incapacitation, then we need additional levels of suspicion beyond reasonable suspicion to believe that the person may be either secreting and by I mean secreting, not secreting, but secreting something on his or her person that could be a danger to the person, to our staff, other people in the facility, or to the facility itself. And if we have that, then there are thresholds we can do. Although even there, we generally, when possible, reserve ourselves the opportunity to leave the individual in an observed status alone without having had the intrusiveness of a search applied, if that's possible and feasible. But a lot of these evolve depending on the exigency and depending on the situation in its totality of circumstance. The short answer, however, which I should have led with, is yes, there are differences for how we apply these policies to people who are prearranged, who are sentenced, who are detained with us long-term, who are incapacitated, and for that matter, who are detained or on misdemeanor charges or on felony charges.
Thank you. So I'm going to try to get away with one more question without offending anybody or I can only assume, I don't sit on corrections list, but I can only assume that when someone enters a facility, that if they identify as a biological male or female, they would be searched by a biological male or female. Is that correct?
Our policy is to have same gender searches.
So given that situation, if someone comes in who identifies as a transgender woman, and one or two things happens, either there hasn't been any surgery as of yet, but your policy says you can't search anybody just to identify which sex they may or may not be. So if you have someone identified as in this particular case, a transgender woman, would you have a female officer search that individual even though there's been no surgery? And what about the rights of the CO?
This policy allows discretion on the part of a supervisor to make a determination about whether or not to proceed with what the supervisor believes the individual's gender to be, or to go against that understanding in the hopes of having a more stable and safe interaction. So it really does go down to supervisor discretion.
I'll end with that right now because I think I've done all right without offending anybody, but it's a very convoluted process, it appears to me.
I do think that writing about it can be challenging. I think in execution, it is not. I think there's a lot of application of common sense in execution. And that common sense is the balance of the individual's dignity and autonomy and right to say, this is my identity, and our ability to say yes, and our ability to also say, well, but there are also safety concerns here that are going to, for this, in this moment, override it. Or we'll act in this way, but we will refer it back to a committee that will have additional expertise on that committee, additional time to deliberate with that committee in order to make more, I think, informed decisions. But we have to carve out that difference between decisions that are made in the moment and sometimes under a certain amount of pressure or duress, an exigency. For example, same gender is not always possible when there are exigencies. But I think that really this is an application of common sense and the understanding that at the heart of what we do is the dignity of the individuals with whom we interact, while at the same time observing our statutory responsibility to protect the persons and property from offenders of criminal law. And that includes other members of the facility, whether that's staff or other people inside the facility.
Thank you. Do I have one more quick? I'm going to get away from the searches. So if someone enters one of our facilities and they haven't gone out to see any gender affirming care, whatever, any counseling and so on and so forth. Once they come into our facilities, my concern is there a time frame where now all of a sudden they say, oh, I'm going to identify as this or that. And now I want surgery, now I want the gender affirming care, whatever else. Is that something that the taxpayers are just going to simply say, that, oh, I guess we got to pay for this stuff? How does that work?
I'll refer that to the doctor, but I think that I'll refer to the doctor.
Yeah, I mean, our policy is at any point, if anyone wants to identify as a different gender and wants to proceed with services, we will follow our policy, meet with them, do an assessment, do a diagnosis if it's indicated, and follow their request if it is in fact gender dysphoria and it meets the criteria. So that could happen at any point, yes. And it is, I believe all services are paid for by the general fund.
But I think we have to be very clear. The person may say, I identify with the other sex.
Uh-huh.
I want to transition. Doesn't mean that they're gonna do that the next day. There
Correct.
is a process where they have to be vetted. And I hate to say it this way, to make sure it's a legitimate.
Yes, correct. I mean, it's fair to say we work with a very complex population of patients. And we take every request seriously, but we also will make the appropriate referrals and, refer the patient to mental health, refer the patient to psychiatry, do a full evaluation, diagnostic assessment, and kind of take it from there. But there are certain Medicaid standards set in place, and we follow those. We follow the DSM-5 for psychiatric diagnosing. So we would make sure all of those things line up, because anyone could say anything at any point. I use ADHD all the time. Like, I've got ADHD, an Adderall prescription, and we'll refer the patient to mental health, see the doctor, and we follow the process. They may not end up having ADHD. So it sort of follows the same line. We refer everyone, we take everything seriously, and we do the workup.
So if they did meet the full guidelines, whatever else, they want to go through this transition, just off the top, do you have any idea what the cost may be for that full transition?
I do not know the cost.
1,000, 100,000, any
I
idea?
would guess it would be in the 20s, 30s, 50, for a full, all of the surgeries could be $50,000 to $100,000.
They may not be there for that length of time either, because that doesn't just happen over a period of 2 months. It could be 10 years.
There has to at least be like a year waiting period, living as the opposite gender. So choosing to live as a different gender, there are certain criteria.
They could be there. They could be there. I know we may not be there, but they could be there, correct?
It's possible.
Have we experienced any of that?
Experienced any surgeries? Yes.
And how long have the folks been with us? Or were they already transitioning in the community prior to being incarcerated? Do you have that broken down?
No, I don't have that broken down, and I don't want to reveal a lot just because it is a
Such
small number.
I will say that our gender identification and placement policy does spell out steps to take if someone is misusing accommodations. And it's not an impossible phenomenon. I think it's a rare phenomenon with this population, but it's not impossible. And there is codification in that policy, the one published back in February, about what can be done to evaluate whether or not accommodations are still appropriate for an individual if it's determined that the person's misusing those accommodations.
I mean, we received testimony that's from someone lived experience. And 2 things about, there really needs to be a process to work with the person who says they want to transition, and really have a process in place, not just take someone's word, but get it and work it through diagnostic. And that was a recommendation. The other piece that also came through is to make sure that someone say that they're transitioning specifically to get into the female facility, because there could be victims. So those are the 2 things that were testified to.
And I was just gonna say, and the person who testified, she identified that actually, she had seen that happen. So, having having the procedures to identify when people are doing it for different reasons than are related to their healthcare is important. My quick question is, getting back to the searches and the request by individuals who identify, whatever gender they identify as. Do you keep any data on, because the policy does allow you to deny those requests under certain circumstances? Do you keep any data on any number of requests that are denied?
I don't have that data for me. The policy requires that it be tracked in OMS when denials occur. And also when we cannot work within normal policy owing to exigencies. That is supposed to be documented as well.
Okay, so you do keep data. Okay, thank you.
Ginny, and then we're gonna move this along, because DCF this.
I think we probably should be moving along. I just want to affirm that folks who are seeking gender affirming care who are ultimately treated have significant medical psychiatric needs. It's so for me, it's not, it's of course it is going to, and I'm responding to Senator Norris because he and I'll have a conversation, I hope. I'm sorry I'm not there today. But it's a real issue for folks, and it is a real medical psychiatric condition. And we would, I think, would we deny heart disease, a heart surgery, which is very expensive, similarly. So I think one of the problems that we have is stepping over the hurdle that this is actually something that people feel very deeply and need support and need help to clarify who they are, and if indeed they need to have the change, the transition. So it's a big conversation for some folks. I get that, and I'm very appreciative of the work that WellPath is doing to help people in this situation.
So I'm gonna tie this up because we are running over schedule, but we're gonna spend more time working on this. Because we do have to get into your search policy. See if we make any legislative recommendation, and we do have to get into the healthcare piece of gender affirming care. You need to spend a lot more time, but today was just preliminary, so the committee members could kind of come up to speed on what was in the legislation and also what's going to be required of us in our work and recommendations. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
So let's quickly change subjects and go back to the Green Mountain Youth Facility, and we have DCF on Zoom with us, and we do have some DGS folks back in the building. So we would like to receive an update from DCF's world in terms of where we are and are going forward with the Green Mountain Youth Facility. So I'm not sure who is going to start this. I'll leave it. It's you, Sandy. You're on, and I know that Deputy Commissioner Radke is here as well, so I'm not sure which one of you two is going to start us on.
Hi, I can, and I see Hannah is at the table too, Hannah Marble. She's representing there today. I had to be out of town. My mom had surgery unexpectedly, so I'm in Florida in the heat wave down there, but sorry I couldn't be in person. And Erica Radke is on, and Tyler Allen, I think, is also on. So we'll be able to answer any questions. I understand that there was a session this morning, and a lot was the physical plant was shared with you. And I'm just wondering what the questions are. I know that some came up that we won't be able to answer because we have to wait to hear from, there are a couple of working groups that are going to advise us on programming. I think there were some questions about programming and operations. So I don't think we'll have a wealth of information to share with you there, but happy to answer questions.
So you folks are in the driver's seat in terms of what your program needs are.
Yeah.
And also, I'm assuming that for the lease payments, that would be coming out of DCF's budget as well. And for staffing of the facility, that will be coming out of your budget as well.
Mm-hmm.
So we've heard this morning about physical layout of the thinking of the buildings. What is going to be occurring programmatically within those buildings that you need and the design of that space?
You're aware that we have 2 working groups that are helping us to tease out what it is we should be providing. And I think a lot of what we do is going to be dependent on the feedback we get from those groups. We have basic estimates from some providers that we've worked with in the past to get an idea of how many staff people we would need there. We've designed the building in a way to minimize the cost of staffing so that there's a lot of shared space. But as far as the specific programming and the monitoring and that sort of thing, we're still working on that.
How many juveniles will be housed there at one time? What's the capacity?
Capacity will be 14.
14. And it'd be Medicaid coverage?
What'd you say? Will it be Medicaid? No, it's a secure building, so no.
And when do you anticipate hearing back from the 2 stakeholder groups?
Well, we meet monthly. The next meeting is September 2nd, and we'll be talking about oversight and monitoring during that meeting. And I think we've built out the agenda based to align with the decision making that has to happen on the building side. And we're happy to share that with you and also ask you if you would like to participate. I mean, you could join, you wouldn't have a voice in the meeting, but you could certainly listen to what's being discussed. But I would assume probably in the next 6 months, we should have clear guidance on what folks would want, because if we have to go out to bid, we need to do that a year in advance. And if we're looking at opening in 2028, I think we would hope in the next 6 months we have some clarity and some recommendations from those groups.
Good morning.
Hi.
No, sorry, it's afternoon, I guess. We are afternoon already. Thank you for clarifying the capacity. I know when we had gotten updates at previous joint justice meetings, we had some questions. I think this was before your tenure, Commissioner, around the age range of the individuals who would be here. So I don't know if Tyler or Erica can address that. We had some concerns about the wide age range.
12 to 17. 12
to 17. Okay, so you've narrowed it. So, okay, that's.
Correct me. I would ask Tyler or Erica to correct me if I'm mistaken.
That is correct. It's 12 to 17 in age up till the 18th birthday.
Yeah. Thank you. I think it was 10 to 19 or something like that previously. So I appreciate that that narrowing. The other thing I'm curious about, and I know this might be an issue that's more maybe technical in nature, but are you considering this a group home, or are you considering this what are you considering this, I guess, is how I'll ask the question.
Yeah, I think it meets the definition for a group home. Yeah. It's secure, but it's a residential program group home. Yeah.
So, okay, so I'm gonna leave the issues with that, to a conversation I had, offline with the folks from BGS, so I'll leave them to discuss that with you. So is it the intent that it would be licensed by, by whom, I guess? Would it be licensed by Dale, or would it be licensed as a residential facility under DCF?
I think there's more work to be done there, and I think we will be working, like I said, September 2nd, having a conversation with the work group that is advising us on what oversight and monitoring should look like. Yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Okay. And then, I will say I have had some comments about the lack of public access to public meetings, around these input groups that you're speaking of. I'm just wondering if those have been addressed.
I believe they have. I think there was a revamping of the group, and in those there were in-person meetings that required some group building activities and discussions. So those were in person, and there might have been, I mean, it wasn't hybrid. There was no hybrid option for those. And I think we have one more in person before we open the hybrid option. But the people that are participating in the group, we do post the minutes of everything that was discussed. We do that within 5 days of completion. And the folks that are involved in the discussion, I think we had real positive feedback. Not I think, I know we had positive feedback after the last meeting. And I think we cleaned up any of the issues that were evident.
Thank you. So I guess I just want to I want to make sure that I'm understanding. So in-person there's no requirement that all meetings be, on dual platforms. So I get that you had in-person meetings, that's fine. You consider those in-person meetings to be public meetings, I'm presuming.
Yes, and there
So
were public, yeah, it was open to the public.
So people, okay.
Yeah.
And then I mentioned to the folks at BGS, I think because of the relative speed with which this is moving, I think that is, we're seeing progress where, the last two attempts have kind of been thwarted. So happy to see progress being made. So I think that Senator Lyons and I have agreed that we want to have our opportunity for maybe a little bit more in-depth conversation with you and BGS, and are going to plan a joint meeting to do that in the early fall.
That'd be great.
So I have a question about raise the age. So right now, the plan is that you would take juveniles from the age of 12 to 17. So if we do raise the age where 19-year-olds would start in family court, would this facility be able to hold 18-year-olds up to 19?
No. We're not designing it for that.
So you're designing it for ages 12 to 17.
That's correct.
Through 17.
Through 17 up to 18. So if the legislature in a year or two does decide to go forward and raise the age to 19, that holds.
I think we can discuss that should the legislature decide to do that, but that's not the case right now. And what we're doing is addressing what we believe we need to right now to serve the population that we have identified as needing this level of service.
So what would have to change structurally in the building to house an 18-year-old if the age is raised to 19?
Well, they would have to be sight and sound separated from anyone who's under. Well, I believe this is the case, and this is not a question I had anticipated, but I believe they would have to be sight and sound separated from anyone who's under 18 years of age. So they would have to be placed separately, and we would have to not allow that sight or sound. Does Tyler or Erica, do you have input?
I believe that's to my understanding too, to be compliant with PREA, but I'm not the expert on PREA and how that works either. But that is one component, one concern.
Yep. Thanks.
I'd agree. And I would also think that given that population and that age, not only would there be the PREA concerns, I would imagine we would be looking toward a separate building, at least given their older population with our youngest population, just for milieu purposes as well.
Martin, your hand went up.
Yeah. I mean, I just want to make clear that we're already have 18-year-olds who are being treated as delinquents in the family court, and and right now it's going to go to 19 in July of 27 unless the legislature does something. That it's on that track. But putting that part aside, I'm concerned about making sure we accommodate currently what we have as far as 18-year-olds. And my understanding is that they can't be held in an adult prison without sight and sound separation because of PREA. And therefore, something like this facility is needed for those 18-year-olds that we currently already have. But perhaps I'm wrong, but I would like to further look at that over the next meetings as well.
And I think Commissioner Murad would be better equipped to answer that. My understanding of PREA is 18 is the age. And we would have to be looking at what the population is. So who would be served through Raise the Age? Do they need this level of treatment? So I don't know that that's the case.
So right now, the facility is designed for 15?
14.
14 kids, you did say that. And how many kids right now are out of state who would be then eligible to be brought back into the state? Or are we accommodating kids who are currently in the state and being served within the community or elsewhere?
Okay, I'm going to try the numbers here, and then
go close to the numbers. I'm
about
trying to sort out, because once you start getting to the 19, 18-year-old question, some of that resolves itself by who's out there and needs services.
Right. So we have approximately 90 kids being served in a residential placement somewhere, and 2/3 of them are out of state. So of those, there are specific treatment requirements that would not be addressed or could not be addressed in this in the Green Mountain Youth Center, but there are some that could be and could be brought. The whole idea is to bring them home to Vermont and help them to transition back to their communities. So there are plenty that are currently being served out of state that would be brought back.
Other questions of the committee? So House Human Services Committee and Senate Health and Welfare Committee will be having a joint meeting at some point early fall in the next few weeks. And I would suggest that this committee hear a follow-up from that, along with the partners at BGS, because I can see where we might come to a standstill in terms of designing this building if we don't know what the specific programmatic needs are of your department.
Oh, I'm confused. You mean we don't say what the programmatic needs are? I think we know what the programmatic needs are. It's more about how are we going to deliver? What's the best way to deliver those?
Correct. And I want to make sure that folks are on the same timeline and that DCF knows what they need in terms of programming and staffing and what the residents there are going to need for rehabilitative services so that the building reflects those needs.
Hmm. Great.
Other questions, thoughts? Wendy?
Thank you. So you said, just first about the number of kids, 90 kids, two-thirds out of state. So our need is about 30 total in state. Is that right?
No, that's what's currently being, the question was, I
Right.
interpreted the question is, who is the population that this could serve? We currently send about 60 kids out of state. They're not all going to be, by the time this place opens, they're not still going to be in a residential placement out of state. But that's the group of kids that we would be looking to serve in state.
Okay, so let me ask it a different way. Is this facility going to meet the need of the state?
We believe so, yes, because we're employing different practices in addition to building this. We're also doing some family group conferencing. We're doing restorative work within the family services division. We think we can further reduce the number of kids that are in custody and need this level of care.
Okay, that's encouraging. And so the previous facility had obviously issues. And do you have basically an explanation for the public about how this one is going to be different?
Yes, we will have a better explanation after the two groups that are working concurrently address the challenges. There's one group that are addressing challenges related to the previous facility exclusively. And then there's another group that is saying, okay, best practices, what kids need, this is what you should be doing. And we will use the information from both of those groups to inform what we do and explain how it will be different.
Okay, terrific. That's very helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything else? So I'm sure we'll be following up after the joint meeting of those two standing committees. We'll do the follow-up on that.
Great.
Be sometime probably in September, people may be meeting. October, we're looking at October.
First week of October.
I still consider September summer. That's not fall. Let's not rush it.
Real fast. I want to thank you and for holding in there because I know we were running a little late. So I really appreciate the three of you hanging in there. So
Of course. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.
So let's quickly transition to the next topic, which is an update from the Secretary of the Agency of Human Services on where we are in establishing a permanent forensic facility. Also, where are we in terms of the interim plan to provide competency restoration services for folks? We've got plenty of chairs.
We do, for once. It's great.
Thanks. Oh, identify yourself.
Thank you for having us. For the record, I'm Jenny Samuelson, Secretary for the Agency of Human Services. And I'm joined by Nicole Stasio, who is our Director of Federal and Policy and Strategic Initiatives. Most of what we're going to cover today, Nicole is going to walk us through in terms of where we are operationally in our planning for both the short term and the long term for a forensic facility. So I'll turn it over to Nicole.
Yeah, great. Oh, I had myself. So for the record, Nicole Stasio, I am the Director of Federal Policy for the Agency of Human Services. So I'll start with just kind of a general high level status update. So what I would say is that our implementation activities for this are on schedule. we've really started with an intra-agency governance structure where all of the departments are kind of leading in their area of expertise. We've got a few main bodies of work underway. So it's the emergency rulemaking, the legislative feasibility report, public engagement process, the hiring and planning for the medical director, and then general facility planning and operations. Okay, so I'll go through sort of each of them. So since the session has ended, we've been working really hard on the emergency rulemaking. As I said, we've established a team with AHS Central Office, with the Department of Mental Health, with the Department of Aging and Independent Living, the Department of Corrections, and the Department of Health. So we've started with really just an outline of what the emergency rules will be. DMH has been leading on the clinical aspects of this, whereas Dale and VDH are leading in their areas of expertise, so substance use, intellectual and developmental disabilities, traumatic brain injury, dementia, and any other specialty populations that we might be anticipating. Whereas the DOC is really focused on kind of like the operational development. So we've also been, as part of this process, been reviewing competency restoration models in other states and doing a lot of research in this space.
So I just want to be clear here. So what you just laid out in these bullets is what's going to form the rules.
Correct.
In the emergency rulemaking for the interim competency.
Correct.
Because we know there are folks who are held right now in DOC's facilities. So the thinking was in the interim, before we get a full forensic facility up and running, that at least in the interim, we provide some competency restoration services to folks who are currently being held in our correctional facilities. So that's what this page is all about.
Yeah, it is. We're really thinking about this as a phased approach. So anything to do with the long-term facility would be done after we kind of finish phase one of this, which I consider to be essentially through the legislative report that's due in January, is how I'm doing it.
So you talked about a medical director.
Correct.
You've got medical director planning. Under what department would that medical director be under?
Yeah, so the medical director, our goal is to have it as an agency medical director. That is our understanding of the intention of the legislature. So we are currently working to make that happen. We are at our cap for an exempt positions, and so we are in the process of moving them around. That's a legislatively mandated cap. So we are in the process of working through that and moving positions around to make that happen. And we started the recruitment and hiring process. It had originally been posted at DOC. So any of the applicants in the DOC's current pool, we will move over to the agency recruitment.
So the medical director would answer to you, the secretary?
Medical director would answer to the secretary.
So are you going to repost the position as sitting in AHS?
We will repost it. In the interim, one of the reasons that you see DMH leading in the development of the clinical provisions is that the Department of Mental Health has a medical director. And so we are drawing on them and on the medical directors in our other departments to help facilitate this process in the interim time. Overall, the process is being overseen at the secretary's office level. And so for this work, those medical directors are feeding that information into the process and indirectly into the secretary's office.
Okay. So regarding the operational planning, so we started this by asking, about other competency restoration programs in other states. WellPath is a provider in many other places, so they were able to point us in the directions of some states that had really good programs that we should look at. So they've identified states like Maine, California, Pennsylvania. I know we've looked at Oregon and some other places, just for us to sort of build our expertise before we develop our own rule. They're also working on evaluating housing and classification approaches for individuals ordered into the program during the interim process, including whether or not they should have a distinct classification like SFI, the serious functional impairment. We do think that the initial planning anticipates that housing decisions will be based on clinical and security needs, and that we're really at this time assessing whether or not we need any modifications, trailers, furniture, what that would look like. So we would anticipate coming back to you either at the next update or later with any requests or information there.
So this is all about the interim.
Correct. Yep.
And who, for your second bullet, who does the evaluation in terms of the housing and classification for individuals ordered into the program? So who does the order into the program?
You mean, is it ordered by the court into the program?
It's for,
Again, I think some of those are some of the operational details that we're working on, Chairman. And so in this case, DOC is evaluating whether operationally, they separate their population out by different programs. Operationally, whether they would classify them differently. That's what the second bullet is. The court could order someone into the care and custody of the state. The question is whether that individual would be, while they're in corrections, classified for programming into existing or a new classification. Because as you identified before, we already have individuals who are incompetent and who are in DOC's custody.
So would you anticipate DOC or AHS or some entity identifying those individuals who are already in custody, talking with their legal counsel, talking with the courts about some sort of revision to their order, once this program is established, if you envision them being in this program?
I think that falls actually under what the clinical pieces were before. And I think we would get a little ahead of ourselves right now to identify what those are until we've done some more of the clinical planning. We want to make sure that we do this thoughtfully and carefully. And so I definitely in our next update can come back with more information on what that communication will look like based on what I'm hearing you say, based on what someone's programmatic needs are. And that really falls in the clinical aspects.
Okay, so I wanted to make sure folks were aware that we do have a public meeting on Wednesday, August 26th from noon to 2. That will be both in person at the Waterbury State Office Complex. There is also a hybrid option for those who want to call in or Zoom in. So we will be open to feedback on what people have that they want to inform us about on the emergency rule development for the interim policy for December. We wanted to give people an opportunity who maybe had a different position when they gave testimony, that now that there is a facility that's coming, they may want to provide different feedback. So we wanted to open that forum for people to be able to do that. This information is here. It is also listed on the Department of Mental Health's website. It's in the Department of Library's calendar. We're also sending it out on distribution lists.
I don't see Dale's website listed here.
You're right. They're not listed there. I will double check. We are trying to make sure it's listed everywhere. So I'll make sure it's not an oversight that it actually isn't there and it's not just the slide.
I'm just gonna say this for your benefit, because I said it this morning. It's like, I want to make sure people, one, don't refer to this as a mental health facility or program, because it is much broader than that under this legislation, and much to my dismay personally. But I want to make sure that the needs of those individuals who have intellectual, developmental, or other cognitive disabilities are recognized at the Department of Disabilities Aging Independently.
Yeah, so I would identify that we've got multiple departments who are working on this together. We'll take that, we share your passion for that. We'll make sure that it's also appropriately listed on Department of Health and the Disabilities and Aging and Independent Living. I think all of those departments are equally participating in this design and planning process.
Okay, so regarding the legislative feasibility report, as I said, we're on track to have it ready when it's due in January. In addition, we'll have an update for you next time we come, which I believe is in November. We've kind of got the framework worked out right now. We're looking to make sure that we include any information about Vermont's current system, any of the relevant information that we gathered from our research from the other states that we performed, the facility feasibility, workforce considerations, operations, other fiscal considerations, and any legislative recommendations we might have for statutory updates or changes or anything else that we need. Okay, so I just wanted to kind of leave with an overview of what we're working on and kind of our upcoming milestones. So again, the emergency rulemaking is in process and we are starting the drafting. We have the public meeting in order to conduct some stakeholder feedback in August, the legislative report in January, the medical director, and then the emergency rule, which is due on by the end of this calendar year, so December 31st.
So we're gonna have you back.
Yeah.
Any questions, comments?
Yep.
Okay, on Zoom at all?
Yep. I do.
Okay, Wendy?
Thank you. For how long do you expect the emergency rule to be in effect?
So the emergency rules, the way the legislation was drafted, are actually in effect until July of 2029, when the new facility, when the new the long-term forensic facility would be in effect.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, emergency rule goes 6 months, and you'd have to redo the emergency rule to continue that.
Correct, but the statute actually makes it so that we don't have to do that, because it was written in statute that we don't have to do that every 6 months process, and that it is right through until the long-term facility. That being said, I do think there is a chance that we will find that we need to update the emergency rules after we get this moving. So I wouldn't say that I think that it will be a one and done, but
Yeah, 6 months. You have to refile every 6 months.
Don't because
I don't recall seeing that.
I
in the
don't
statute,
recall
but it
seeing
could be
that,
there.
it could be, and we don't have a copy of it.
Yeah.
Yes, it is
Yeah.
stated in the act that they don't have to renew.
Doesn't say that. It says they stay in effect, so I think there's a clash in the statute.
There is a clash, yeah, because we didn't have anybody in our committees to sit on LCAR.
Notwithstanding.
Well, we can address that next year. Don't let us forget, Trevor.
Part of APA, you have to. So
Yeah,
yeah, I was surprised as well. That's why I was positive it was in there, because I had to double check.
anything else? Bon?
And if there's anything else that you want to make sure that is included in the next update, please let me know. I'm happy to make sure it's there.
Well, I think it would be really important to send out to all the members of Justice Oversight the meeting on August 26th.
Sure.
The one with the connection to teams. So any
Yeah.
committee members wanna attend that, just at least to hear what
Yeah.
comments.
I'm also happy to, report back what's heard, what we heard from people, just in like a, an unofficial legislative report after the meeting. So happy to do that.
That would be important.
So, in response to your question about what we would like to see at a future update, this is, after the clinical and programmatic work is further along. Definitely like to see the differences that you would plan to have depending upon the disability of the individual that's been identified, how the approaches may be different.
Yes, happy to.
Anything else? Thank you.
Thank you.
On folks, but now we're gonna get into the accountability document. And the whole group of folks here. Not Terry. Given notwithstanding.
Notwithstanding, Trevor.
So notwithstanding you,
It's notwithstanding.
Ginny was right.
Yeah.
given notwithstanding.
Yeah. Check the language that satisfies your requirement.
It doesn't seem like,
Okay. I'm just making sure.
yeah,
I let him in and
I don't
I
agree.
was like, oh gosh, what if that's not?
these people have done everything. Can't have indefinite. Not emergency.
She bought cookies.
Yeah, we'll see who's sitting around the table.
I keep them all there.
Oh, sure.
But you have to have.
And Judge O'Neill. Judge O'Neill, are you starting or is the judge?
I'm sorry, Judge Sony is away and he's connected in a parking lot on his phone. So he's here to be able to answer questions and offer information, but I know he wasn't certain of the connectivity where he is.
He's probably on vacation.
He's on vacation, kindly connected.
Thank you, Terry.
He's even dressed up, Judge.
I did I brought the outfit with me. I just, unfortunately, the technology and other things, so we'll hope it works, if there's any questions.
It works. Now you can go out to a formal dinner. Welcome, Terry. So if you could identify yourself for the record and give us some updates on the accountability docket.
Great, thank you. Terry Porcone, State Court Administrator. Thank you for the chance to come and comment. And basically, I'm in response to the provision in the miscellaneous judiciary bill, H 937 or Act 165. It included a section that required the Department of State's attorneys and sheriffs with Attorney Lucas Demont, the Defender General, AHS, and Judiciary to appear at this meeting, the August 2026 meeting, to report on the progress and implementation of the rapid accountability docket that's part of the miscellaneous judiciary bill. And since the effective date of the bill, which was June 18, there's been one rapid accountability docket that's been implemented, and that's in Windham County. So what I was going to do is give a brief overview of the process leading to that approval, and then basically how the judiciary is meeting the requirements in the bill, and then Attorney Ludus Demont soon will refer to the prosecutors and Nicole DeStasios for the AHS obligations under the bill as well. As you likely know, the focus of the rapid accountability docket is on defendants who have 5 or more cases in a docket. And it involves collaboration between the courts, the state's attorneys, the prosecutors, the defense counsel, and AHS, as well as DOC and the transport team. And it anticipates that the judiciary make available judges and court time, and anticipates that there be a dedicated prosecution and defense resources, and DOC and AHS resources, as well as sufficient transport services. And the primary purpose of the docket is twofold. One, to resolve the cases with the 5+ dockets more quickly, and 2, to connect individuals with services that they need. So the act, as I said, went into effect June 18th. The process involves the executive director of the sheriffs and state's attorneys, the defender general, and the secretary of AHS to recommend to the chief superior judge a county that wishes to take advantage of the rapid accountability docket resources. And Judge Zone approved Windham County for the next docket on June 24, 2026, right after the act went into effect. And we immediately initiated stakeholder meetings to take advantage of the 30-day preparation period that's also spelled out in the bill. And the initial meeting included representatives from the Rutland docket and the Chittenden docket so that we could benefit from their insights. And I really want to acknowledge and thank Nicole DeStasios, who took the lead in organizing meetings in that 30-day period so that all of the stakeholders could be connected and so that we had as seamless a transition as possible on the start date of July 20th. From the judiciary's perspective, then, what was done during that period, the report requires a dedicated judge. Judge John Treadwell is presently assigned to the Windham civil docket. He has extensive experience, as you know, in the criminal docket. And he was selected and was enthusiastic about being the dedicated judge during this 90-day pilot period. Judge Teachout, in the meantime, who's retired, is covering his civil docket during the 90-day period so that that docket doesn't languish. We set aside then a courtroom in the Brattleboro Courthouse, the Wyndham Criminal and Family Courthouse, for the docket and set aside 5 days a week. And in that first week, the courtroom was utilized all day, every day. So the cases, there were approximately 70 in number. Tim probably, Attorney Ludas Dumont has, I'm sure, the exact numbers and I think data, but approximately 70 that were at the initial outset that he and the state's attorney and public defender went over to identify which ones were appropriate and which ones would be feasible for the project. They had statuses that whole first week, and the schedule is a fluid one, depending upon what's happening, what's conditions. They've also set aside a separate jury panel so that if there are any dockets or cases on this docket ready for trial, that they can be scheduled. One, in fact, was scheduled and I think settled midway through. So that's part of the process in Wyndham as well. We also have a dedicated criminal courtroom operator at the ready. So if cases come in even at the last minute, we have that coverage as well as security coverage. So that's been arranged from the court operations perspective. And Judge Treadwell, we had asked him just for his comments, and his impression after 2 weeks, it's been 2 weeks now, that he feels that it is working as conceived. He said as of Monday, which would have been 2 weeks in, they had closed out 51 dockets, including 10 defendants at that point in time.
That's 51 of the 70?
I know 10 defendants of the 70 and 50 of the, I don't have the exact number of cases, probably Attorney Ludas Dumont does, but there were 70 defendants on the original list, 10 of whom have resolved their cases. And the total of cases for those 10 is 51. So he did say that there were some matters being straightened out, but I can tell you far fewer than were involved in the Rutland and Chittenden rollouts, just because we did have the benefit of the 30-day preparation before starting day one. So that's what I had in terms of my report for the court operations aspect of it and its implementation to date. Should I ask if Judge Zoney has anything to add? Sorry.
Sure. So it's a 3-month.
90 days, yes.
So Judge Zoney, it's all yours.
Hi.
Add anything?
Good morning. Good afternoon, Tom Zoney, Chief Superior Judge. I don't have much to add. I would reiterate what Terry said about Nicole DeStasio from AHS and working with the governor's office and others to really keep things going in a direction that we all need. The stakeholders have worked very well together to try to address any impediments that were actual or perceived in the future to make sure that it goes smoothly. And I was encouraged when I heard Judge Treadwell say that he thought it was going well. Now, I believe Senator Hashim may be on the call. He's down in Wyndham County. He may have some assessment of how it's going, but as Terry pointed out, we're 2 weeks in, and it does seem as though things are absolutely trending in the right direction. One question that I know is frequently asked has to do with, is there a connection between the accountability docket and a treatment court? And treatment court there is a Southern Vermont drug and DUI treatment court that operates out of Windsor County. Individuals from Wyndham are permitted to enter into that as part of a resolution of their case. And I understand that there are steps being taken to try to remove what I'll call a transportation impediment relating to urinalysis testing and getting to some court hearings. So I know that there is talk that they're trying to remove that as an impediment to open that up as a potential road for resolution for individuals in the docket. It's started out as 5+, however, the court is reaching down to 4+ and 3+, and individuals who it believes, along with the input of the stakeholders, could potentially benefit from being in the docket.
Any questions from Martin or Nodder? So I'm going to go with Martin first because I saw that hand, and then Nodder.
Yeah, I just one question and one I guess heads up on some information that I think that that we need going forward. The question is simply just what's the expectation as far as the next county that you might move to after Wyndham?
At this time, our goal was to get Wyndham up and running. And if you ask that question in a couple of weeks, I think I'll have a much better answer after talking to the stakeholders. I want to speak with, of course, Terry, Matt, AHS, Tim Lueders-Dumont, to make sure that we're all on the same page. We've had preliminary discussions. I think we have a good idea where it looks like it would need to go next, but it would be premature to get out in front of everyone because it's a team effort to develop where it's going to go.
Sure, understood. I appreciate that. All right, so the other thing is I would I would like to know kind of the aftermath or I'd like to understand what's happening in Chittenden County, in Rutland County, now some months after the docket, the accountability docket, rapid accountability docket occurred there, just to see if there's any longer term effects of having done this. And that's not something for you to comment on right now, but I just wanted to flag that that's definitely something for the upcoming session that I think that we're going to want to look at, just to see if this has any kind of long-term positive impact. So, all right, that's all I had. Thanks.
Thank you.
Daughter?
Thank you. So I'll just mention, I am representing a number of folks, a number of defendants, both in the criminal docket and the accountability docket down here in Wyndham County. I'm not going to talk about any one particular case, but I think I can just generally say that what I've seen only over the past several weeks is that it has been working really well. I think one of the great aspects of it is there's a lot of flexibility, and it's much more dynamic. Having the direct access to resources, HCRS and AHS in the room is very helpful. And having these hearings happen literally once a week or once every 2 weeks, depending on defendant's certain situation, it's helpful to have folks coming back on a frequent basis to determine how they're engaging with those services. And from what I've seen, generally it's leading to, I'll just say, fair resolutions for folks who are going through this docket. I do think some of the challenges that I've seen are the fact that our justice system is inherently adversarial, and that's how it's been historically. And the accountability docket does require a lot more collaboration and, for lack of a better word, less paranoia from both sides of the courtroom when it comes to figuring out what are the best steps forward for one particular defendant. And as long as you got the right prosecutor and the right defender and a good judge, it's a system that I think can work really well. The other challenge really is the workload that it creates. At least down here in Wyndham, we didn't get any additional attorneys on either side of the courtroom. We did get HCRS, and that's been super helpful. But the attorneys who are on both sides, they still have their other cases in the regular criminal docket. And so it is creating a lot more court time for both sides of the courtroom. And the more hours that you're spending in court, the less time that you have to be in your office reviewing discovery and creating a strategy and outlook for a particular defendant. So that's been a bit of a challenge, but it's I think people are overcoming it and working well together.
So I have a question about the collaboration among the providers, because that's part of the wraparound services for folks. And when someone is in the court it's very clear to everyone that there needs to be some providers need to provide some services for the person who coordinates that. And how is that working down in Wyndham County? And how did it work in Rutland?
Yeah, Nicole would probably be the best person to address it. I know in Rutland, it was a matter of, we had people on site in the courtroom and in the courthouse. And there were a number of meetings and then regular check-in meetings throughout the course of the pilot where they would coordinate and collaborate. Probably Nicole would have the best, insights into that part of it though, if that's
fine. What about
I can, it's in my slides though.
you do have that on your slide? Do we want to hear from Nicole first, or do we want to go to Tim? Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter? Why don't you come on up?
It make a difference to me. I feel like Representative Wood, you're probably already sick of me. This is like the third time you've seen me in a week.
Not 16 Nicole.
That's good, Nicole, that would be lovely.
Oh, yes, please do.
Yeah, sure.
I love the joint venture.
It gives me a second to get back online.
If anybody in the room wants a cookie, they're
Yeah, there's
delicious.
cookies
Help
here.
yourself. They're.
Madam Chair, may I approach the bench?
Yeah.
Would you like one, Nicole?
Maybe somebody. Yeah, yeah, they're worth eating.
We are,
Yummy.
for sure.
Sure.
Now we can't talk.
It's good. It buys me a couple of minutes anyway.
I don't have any good jokes at this point, Your Honor.
Yeah, I'm just the same.
People on screen want a cookie?
Right.
Okay. Okay, so I'm gonna go through I think we already talked about this a little. Oh, and for the record, Nicole Stasio, the Director of Federal Policy for the Agency of Human Services. So one of the things we did different this time is we did a sort of one-day kickoff training where we brought everyone together. We had the key players kind of talk about what it is you do, what are your goals, how do you work through this? Because I do agree with Senator Hashim. I think part of what's different here and the way I would frame is it does require some trust. And so some of that trust needed to be built. And so we tried to do that by making sure everybody understood like what are our shared objectives, what are we trying to bring to the table, what are we trying to do. So during that process, we really went through what are the goals of the docket, what do all of us do as part of it, how does the treatment and accountability kind of work together. How do we go from the court to the service provider connection to follow-up services to resolving the charges? What are the engagement expectations? This comes up a lot of, is the participation voluntary? How is it different from treatment court where it's sort of mandated services? Whereas here, we really are asking people to be part of their recovery, and they do need to consent to engage in the services on the stopgap. Every individual is offered services regardless of whether they sign the release, regardless of whether whether or not they engage with the actual services. So everybody is offered the services. We try to screen everyone. A lot of the reasons that people get into this docket is because they maybe have some food insecurity, housing instability, or other things. So we really try to make sure every single person coming through that door has a screening. And then to the extent possible, we try to do a follow-up comprehensive co-occurring mental health and substance use assessment at a later time in a more private, secure, and clinically appropriate setting. As far as communication goes, we have kind of the release of information that allows us to have a conversation about this. What it allows us to share is really just what is the level of care this individual would need. So it might be substance use residential, it might be intensive outpatient services. So it's really just limited to that. Nothing beyond that, nothing about their personal history, nothing about their diagnosis, just what is their level of care. And then the other piece of information we share is essentially an objective determination of engagement. So, and this really comes down to, did they show up to their last scheduled clinical appointment? Okay. Oh, yeah.
Is that it? It's just the showing up is the objective? Okay. Yep.
Yes, it's whether or not they came, whether or not they showed up to the clinical appointment. We don't get into whether or not they participated actively, if that's what you mean in that.
Just wanted to clarify, not a criticism at all.
Yeah,
Probably.
no, these questions, these very detailed questions really come up a lot.
Another question.
Yeah.
Just back on the community providers and the training. So I saw you mentioned the HCRS was there. I just was wondering, were there other or are there other substance use providers, so residential treatment or recovery housing centers?
Yes. And in fact, they not only were they, I mean, the actual kickoff was so well attended. I was pretty surprised at the number of local providers. The chief of police came. We had a landlord, somebody who was representing landlords come. Like, it was very well attended, which I think kind of set us off in the right place. But yeah, the local housing provider who does coordinated entry, they all kind of came, and we actually gave them time at the end to share what the type of referrals they take, what would get somebody into their care, what might be some obstacles. So we kind of all started with a really good understanding of each other.
Are there enough slots in the provider network to take on the folks, or is there a long waiting period?
So we're doing expedited access for individuals. One of the biggest questions people typically ask is whether or not people have had to wait for substance use residential. In most cases, we've been able to expedite either same day access or next day access. Anything beyond that has really been at the client's request to take a few extra days. I will say housing does continue to be a challenge, but we have folks in the courtroom doing screenings who are immediately leaving to help connect people to services. And then we have kind of the rapid same day access to the clinical follow-up.
And what is the role of DOC in this?
The Department of Corrections is, they sometimes are there in the court, and they're able to provide people with information about the last appearance, whether or not they've been attending probation as needed, or any other kind of challenges people face. So a lot of times the probation folks have just like this really intimate knowledge. So they'll be able to say something like, oh, I know that he or she has transportation issues, and give us a little bit more insight as to maybe like when someone isn't able to appear. Okay. So one of the things that I've been doing, I think on point with the data tracking, I'm also very interested to know the question of, is this working? And so and the question was about like, what do these models look like? So we've done a different model in every area, not necessarily by choice, but just due to the availability of providers and the clinicians and whatnot. In Burlington, we've had 2 full-time clinical case managers who were licensed. They actually had come from the children and family court. So they had a built-in knowledge of like the court process, the language, all of that. So they kind of, despite the fact that there was no time between when we launched that, when we decided we were doing it and when we launched it, they came in very well prepared and had a good rapport already with most of the clients. At the same time, I would say they have the highest staffing investment model, which is, I'd say, for about every 8 hours of court time, the clinician spends about 32 hours on outside work, non-billable kind of follow-up time. In Rutland, we had a little bit of a different model. Here we had a master's level clinician that was embedded from the federally qualified health center. This was by far the most efficient model that we ran. He was there approximately 1.5 days per week. And then he spent about 1.5 days per week doing follow-up, and then 2 days a week doing actual billing of Medicaid services, either for those providers or other people on his caseload. I think that model, while highly efficient, also he did, I think, admittedly have some challenges with the amount of work that it required. In Brattleboro, we have essentially 5 police liaisons. They're there about 1 day per week. Each of them are doing about 8 hours, like an 8-hour court day, and they're using the same day access at HCRS for the clinical follow-up. That can be done either through telehealth or in person. So it gives people the options for both of those. I'd say the challenge here is that it really requires a lot of coordination because it's not the same person. And, you know, if somebody comes in on a Monday this week and a Wednesday next week, they're frequently seeing a different person. And so we're really requiring us to use a lot of notes and follow up. And my hope is at the end of this is that we'll have a good sense of kind of what works better, and kind of what's the best and most efficient way to like provide these services, but also provide high quality care. Did I answer the questions about the clinical piece of it? That's the end of my slide.
Any questions, folks? One online.
All right.
Stun them into silence. Tim Leaders Dumont, Executive Director of the Department of State's Attorneys and Sheriffs. And I'll do a little bit of a retrospective on the 2 pilots and then the current non-pilot or the current statutory based docket. So in Chittenden County, during a 90-day period, October 2025 through February, we achieved great deal of success. 330% clearance rate during a 90-day period, which is essentially unheard of for Chittenden County. Today, every Friday, they call it basically support court now, but it's every Friday. State's Attorney George continued to work with AHS and local providers. And with that remaining group, because we trimmed down the docket so aggressively, we've had a 92% appearance rate when cited into court on Fridays, which any prosecutor or justice involved defender would know is pretty unheard of for people with multiple cases pending. So that means we're working with a group that understands that there are stakes and there are follow-ups that are available, and it's a weekly model. Without the 5 days we initially had, we would not have success with 1 day a week. So that was incredibly important.
So Tim, that 1 day a week, were some of those folks that went through the first accountability docket, they're the ones who are coming in, or are they?
Some of them are new, and some may have been involved in the initial, and I don't have the exact overlay data on that. Yep.
So for the new ones, is it a quicker court date that's from the time that they were charged?
It'll be quicker as compared to prior to October 2025. It'll be weekly. Won't be as quick as when we had 5 days a week,
Right.
But quicker. Yep.
Quicker, and is that contributing to such a high percentage of folks showing up?
Consistency and knowing that you will absolutely have an appearance with Judge Adams is a really important part of it. The consistent habit building seems to be a really big part of this. So moving on to Rutland very quickly, because I know the chair of House Judiciary asked the question as well. During a 90-day period, we achieved a 200% clearance rate in Rutland, also incredibly healthy clearance rate. And talking through that, the connection with DOC in Rutland was extremely strong as well. A wonderful local DOC staffer made sure that the information and expectations about what to expect upon sentence, but also how the person was doing on probation or prior supervision was extremely helpful. So some of the takeaways with a little bit of data is that we reduced the overall felonies with repeat folks by 40%. The total docket size, including probation violations working with DOC staff, that was reduced by 22%. Those are important numbers because they also brought down the overall number of pending dockets. So now the Rutland County practitioners have more time to spend on fewer dockets, meaning they're getting a more personalized approach going forward. So different, as Nicole pointed out, but extremely successful. And both of those, AHS and the whole network that they're engaging with has been extremely helpful. Essential, wouldn't be possible. And it's also not the same thing wherever we go. And so what you just heard about it being different, it would be different in Bennington, it would be different in Addison. And wherever you would go, it would be different. But the consistent elements are important. Now we're in Wyndham. So in Wyndham, I want to say that we had essentially 2 or 3 months of conversation that then ramped up in the month prior to launch in July. Senator Hashim gathered a group of folks together as a local leader on this. And then we were looking at the statute, the miscellaneous judiciary bill, and preemptively we're complying with what we thought it would do. And so by the time July rolled around, I had met with stakeholders and had made a recommendation by essentially forwarding Senator Hashim's letter to Judge Zone, and then had a number of conversations and with the Defender General's office, with AHS, and with the courts and with the governor's office. We were very happy to have really nuanced meetings that did different things in the 2 months leading up to Wyndham's launch. Data will be available in a much more nuanced way. We're about 2.5-ish weeks in here. Probably in about 2 to 3 weeks, we'll have a good idea of data. The way it's looked on our end is a couple of things that have been extremely helpful, and I want to thank our legislative partners in making sure we could proceed forward, and the governor's office from a funding perspective. So we've hired a third victim advocate in Windham County. The highest caseload in the state for prosecutors and victim advocates consistently over the last year has been Windham County. So it was the right place to go next. The third victim advocate was immediately deployed to work on the rapid accountability docket day one. And we have a dedicated deputy state's attorney that's just working for 90 days in that docket. So getting extremely familiar with those cases, meeting with Nicole and her team all the time. And I'm also getting acquainted with that pace that Senator Hashim talked about. It is more work immediately. And everything from notices to victims to transports have to happen much more quickly. We also are in the process of hiring a third transport deputy in Windham County to help alleviate prisoner detainee movement in and out of the court. We have had no issues with transports yet. The big one, right, is to Chittenden County. That will be almost automatic over time. Whenever we go from Windham to Chittenden County, we do try to coordinate what makes the most sense with our 25 transport deputies. But we do know that will probably result in overtime. Bennington and Windham had the most overtime in the state last year, which makes perfect sense based on where the facilities are located and in court. But we are outfitting, resourcing to the best of our ability. And if there is any costs that come out during the year, we will talk with Representative Squirrel and Senator Norris about BAA. And as we did last year, we had a stipulated BAA with the governor on the accountability effort. So we're coming up on a year of actually talking through some of these issues, and we've learned a great deal. One of the early pieces that we've seen here, about 50 dockets have resolved from the 70-person population. It includes people with 3 or more, essentially, and a bit of a discretion angle, which has been great. This person has 2. They just picked up a 3rd. Let's not wait for their 5th to get them in front of Judge Treadwell and the team. A couple of stories that have been really encouraging, including a shout out to my colleague here. Getting folks involved with not just AHS services, but their getting their license back, picking up 5 DLSs. So Nicole helped get someone involved with DMV, with IDRP, and now they're resolved their cases. They're back on course. So thank you, Nicole, for doing that. We've had a number of individuals with 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 dockets that have resolved in that population. And we expect to see that continue to move forward with a great deal of pace. I got a little bit of a story and anecdote from the local prosecutor, which I thought was really helpful. It's all very positive, which is great. The piece that I'm most interested in, Senator Hashim and Representative Lalonde from House Judiciary have both talked to all of us about it, is testing how we're doing a year out, and also Representative Squirrel. So that's the area I'm not going to say I'm anxious about, but when it's not the focus of the 90-day, making sure we're still keeping track of the path from whence we come is extremely important to know the investment's worth it. And if we are doing a good job of connecting services and not just focusing on clearance rate's great. It's a great piece of data for me to talk to you all about, but then also coming back. And you all fixed the definition of recidivism. So now we can actually talk about not just reincarceration, but reoffense. So now we'll have better data as well, which is extremely important. So those are some of my main takeaways. The overarching philosophy, right, is reducing the time period between offense or reoffense and getting in front of a judge. That element has been present through the 2 pilots and now the statutory based docket. So we're very happy, and the collaboration with the governor's office, the AHS team, including DOC, has just been incredible, and also DMH has been a wonderful partner, working with Matt Valerio and his team. Mimi Brill down in Wyndham, the local defense bar, it's been great in Wyndham County, and Steve Brown, the state's attorney in Wyndham, from as soon as he saw what was happening in Rutland, he was interested in moving it to Wyndham. And so advocacy and upfront work as we look to the next location. The 2 pieces that are going to be extremely important are going to be ensuring that AHS is comfortable with the next location, that we have buy-in from the local defense bar. It can't happen without local defense cooperation, and that we have the appropriate systems in place for transport. And I will just say this, a little bit of forecasting so the judge doesn't have to. Places that have treatment court right there are helpful, right? Rutland and Chittenden had treatment court right there. So something in Wyndham that we're running into, as we've discussed, is it's not right there. It's good that you can refer folks into it, but that's an obstacle that we're running into. So locations like a Washington that have treatment court available on the rotation could be a really good location. There are other pieces that make it more difficult, as opposed to Wyndham, Rutland, and Chittenden, but we will work through those things. And I just think that the statute, as you passed it, gives an open architecture environment for us to be successful. It's not overly prescriptive, but it also says what the expectations are for me, and that actually is very helpful. So when I'm talking to state's attorneys and sheriffs about resources, I'm able to say yes, and also the docket's here, and we're going to put some resources here right now. It helped me move resources to Wyndham in this case.
I think too, one of the biggest pieces that I think was so successful in Wyndham for it to get started immediately, you had days of planning. And I would think that model carried through wherever you're going to hold the staff again. Because that makes to me, that made all the difference in the world.
And we had meetings about having the days of planning as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the lessons that we learned was, finding out in Rutland, for example, 30 days in, somebody didn't have a key piece of information that was pretty vital for them to do their work, was what we learned of making sure that the next time we did it, that wasn't going to happen again. So I think we're going to leverage that same model as we move on.
Questions, thoughts?
And I also wanted to say that Terry and her team, Lori Canty, Terry Corsones, and of course Judge Zone, with the local comms, have not been waiting for anything. They've been, hey, what are we doing next? Is there any feedback? Do we have a space in the 3rd floor or the basement for people to talk? So we're in a shared space. So it's been great. And in my opinion, we are acting less adversarial, and when we have this expectation and the surge of time and resources. So, yeah.
Yeah, I would also kind of say that Terry and Judge Zone and Tim, the amount of communication we've had that's been open and transparent and good has really made the difference for us to solve problems much more quickly and effectively too.
So we'll have more data for you in probably 2 to 3 weeks, and I'll send that over to Megan when it's available. And on the website, you have the post report from Chittenden, from Rutland, and the governor's data team, 2 people, Dylan and Joseph from the governor's office, have been Lamson and more, and I think it's last name Morseman.
Mormon?
Yeah. Yes, we're getting the name wrong, but Joseph and Dylan in the governor's office have been collecting data from local prosecutors, which is judicial data, analyzing it and producing reports. And we meet every Tuesday, the prosecutor with the governor's data team, to make sure that information is happening and going forward. So that's been great as well. And those reports are authored by the governor's staff that are on your website.
Yes. Okay, for folks on Zoom. Thank you.
Thank you.
So that's a wrap for testimony. We have a schedule. Probably just get on. Any thoughts? What's our next meeting, Megan? September 1st. Okay, and we'll be doing agenda planning. there's a lot of more, I think there's more work that needs to be done on the gender issue, the healthcare piece.
Yeah, I feel like we got kind of rushed at the end, so.
Yeah, and the search piece. Also, I know there's interest in the update on the women's correctional facility. What's gonna happen with that? Martin?
Yeah, so I didn't feel that we had enough time to really go over the raise the age report from the Agency of Human Services. And one specific issue I'd like to hear more from AHS is how they are accommodating and dealing with 18-year-olds as far as in the delinquency area. We specifically have asked them to, well, we gave them more time before we were going to raise the age to 19 for them to figure out how best to deal with 18-year-olds. And I would like to understand, what they've come up with. And similarly, I'm interested, or relatedly, I'm interested in how the challenges and what AHS and DOC are doing with individuals who are sent to family court as youthful offenders who could be up to 20 years old. I think those two things kind of go together because there are 19 and 20-year-olds that are being handled in family court. I know there's a little bit obviously different because they have the incentive that if they don't comply, they can be sent back to the criminal court. But I would like to understand what kind of programming, what they're doing with those age groups in youthful offender and 18-year-olds and currently in delinquency. And that kind of is it's part of what the Agency of Human Resources July 1st report was, but it didn't go too much into depth on that.
Thank you, Martin. Wendy?
Hi, Madam Chair. Yeah, I'm not muted. So the women's prison, there's a lot to talk about there. And I'm hoping that DOC will have suggestions and ideas. I think they said they were looking to us for ideas. I think that's, they're the experts and we can certainly have ideas, but they really need a plan. I won't be there on September 1st, so maybe we can talk about it the next meeting also, but so just a heads up. And then my other comment is just long-term planning on the part of DOC. It seems that we just accept things like overcrowding and we just move on. We assume a combined system. We don't talk about if that's a good system or not. And then we have lots of issues that have just not been addressed. The complaints and the appeals in the prisons. So at some point, and it may just be naming this is I really think, and I don't know if perhaps there is a long-term plan. If anyone is aware of it, please let me know. But I think that's something that someone needs to start thinking about.
So Wendy, is the long-term planning more on the overcrowding?
I just think a long-term plan for the system overall. I just think we're lurching from crisis to crisis. And then the answer is always, oh, we don't have money for that. But there are things we can do without money, and not having money for that that shouldn't cause us to not even name what would be helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you. I actually want to second what Senator Harrison was talking about regarding the long-term planning. And I do want to, at least from my perspective, put some of the focus on the overcrowding aspect of it with with the growing population of detained individuals, not, individuals who haven't yet been sentenced, detained individuals who, the population is increasing, and these are folks who, from what I hear, are, not getting access to the most basic of amenities. I've heard of individuals going weeks without even access to shampoo or, a shaving razor or anything, or a toothbrush, things like that. The small little things that encompass humane treatment of any human being, that are, I think, starting to fall by the wayside with the overcrowding that is happening. That's one of my concerns.
Anything else from folks? We've got a long list. And then just some of our regular reports of work that we need to do. So that would give us a lot of direction for Megan, Hillary, Jenny, and I when we do our agenda planning in a few weeks. It seems like it's extended done. You may have to start over. Anything else before we finish up? Okay. I want to thank you all. This is our first meeting back here after we get out of this section. Things seem to be starting full speed ahead again. So thank you, folks. Thank you, folks on Zoom. Hope to see you all next month, and hope for those folks that have a primary election, you're all successful. And then we can get on to the general for that.